Why, hello there. I'm writer, director, sometimes podcaster Andy Palastides. You might recognize me from the podcast for Great Derelict. No? I mean, Kit does talk about it at least once every season. Anyway, you are listening to the Coffee and Geography podcast, so grab yourself a beverage and enjoy the listen.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Coffee and Geography podcast. And I am switching again to another part of the world, and I'm speaking to Aparna Bamzai-Dodson, all the way the other side of the pond in the US of A. How are you doing? Well, I would say this evening, but for you, this afternoon. I think it's this afternoon for you.
It's 4:30 in the afternoon for me, so I am wonderful. We had a rainstorm that just ended about 30 minutes ago, and the sun is out, and
Oh,
birds are singing, so it's a great day.
yeah. So whereabouts exactly? Because are you located? Because I'm sure I recognise that geological feature behind you, but it's not the Flatirons, is it? No, it's not the Flatirons in Colorado. So what's that behind you?
Uh, yeah, so this is a picture of Colorado. The region that I work for, the center that I work for, is based out of the northern Great Plains of the United States, and I was physically
Oh,
based there for a number of years. Now I actually work outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, so I am a distance worker, and it's a little bit of a different landscape here, but I really miss the mountains and those views that
mm,
I had when I lived in Colorado. So I like to keep the background there to remind me of what I'm working for.
yeah, that's true. I mean, I've had the absolute privilege of working for a very short time in Boulder in Colorado. So and at the offices at NOAA. So I used to go to that building, and then you've got the Flatirons like right behind the building, right there. And when I went for my lunchtime walk, it was just so beautiful. And you just go up a little bit up there towards NCAR, and you could just look down towards Boulder, and it was just, oh, it was absolutely lovely to do that during my lunch break. And then we've got family connections out in Bozeman, Montana. So I'm spoiled, family connections and connections for mountains. But so yeah, I thought you had some familiarity to it. Yeah, so if you're listening to us, folks, rather than watching us, then if you just type in Flat Islands, or what is the actual feature exactly, the name of the feature behind you on your virtual screen there, Aparna?
I believe this is a picture of the Flatirons. I didn't
It is,
take it
yeah, okay.
myself, but yeah, you had very good recognition, Kit Marie, to be able to tell.
Yes, there you go, folks. Just look it up, and it's an absolutely beautiful and fantastic feature. And because one of the things we're going to be talking a lot about is geology, because apparently you work for the USGS, the United States Geological Survey. So let's give this little intro then for folks. So Aparna is the Assistant Regional Administrator for the North Central Climate Adaptation Science Center, or do you say CASC or just
CASC.
CASE?
Yeah, we call
CASC.
ourselves
Okay, I got that
CASCs.
right. CASC. Cool, like CASCs. So this is one of 9 regional centres from the USGS national and regional CASC network. In this role, she undertakes stakeholder and partner engagement to identify strategic science goals, outputs, and objectives, tracks budget and planning expenditures, organises the solicitation and review of project proposals, and coordinates efficient, effective communication and collaboration amongst all the CASC-funded scientists. So just a little task you've got there, Aparna. And
You
then it says here that you have a Bachelor of Science in Statistics and Mathematics, Master in Environmental Management, a PhD in Geography and Environmental Sustainability. So you're definitely speaking to the right person, the right audience here. Research focusing on the theory and practice of engaging stakeholders in the creation of actionable science to support decision making. Wow.
Yeah, so something that people who are listening to the podcast might not be aware of is that the US Geological Survey was founded in 1879. So it's a agency that has been around for a very long period of time for the United States. Originally, it was tasked with mapping and classifying public lands and resources, And over time, really what it has become is the science arm of the US Department of the Interior. So our job is to help provide the science that's needed for public lands, public resource management. And then the organization underneath which I work is specifically focused on climate adaptation. So for all of the public
Wow.
lands and resources, what is the impact of climate change? How can managers make smart decisions for the future for those species and landscapes? And so it's a really exciting job. We get to do a lot of different things. As you mentioned in the intro, I do everything from talking to partners to funding projects to doing a lot of paperwork and managing budgets. And I really enjoy the diversity of my day to day.
Yeah, and folks, this has come up again. So long-term listeners will now realize that I've had conversations with so many different people who kind of like work in the intersection with things like climate adaptation, from like, it could be coastal, geological, it could be social, it could be deprivation, all these kind of things. But you've said it yourself, you really enjoy it, and you get a lot out of this job on an issue which we know is an existential problem. And I keep telling people, and like I have joyful conversations with folks like yourself, like who doing this kind of stuff, as someone who works in climate adaptation, is particularly within the education sector, safeguarding young people and stuff like that. And people keep saying to me, how do you folks keep doing this and say you enjoy your job? This, you must be depressed all the time. It says no, because from a scientific and kind of, safeguarding society and doing what we can to protect people, to protect communities, that's a joyful, fulfilling thing. And so I could tell in the joy in what you just said there, Aparna, about that you really do kind of like love this job, and despite all these kind of like strings you have to pull and plate, as we say over here, plates you have to spin.
Yeah, and you had a really wonderful first episode of the season with Gadfly talking about aquatic invasive species in the Great Lakes. And so I think, similarly here, we're trying to tackle some pretty big problems that our communities, our resource managers are facing. But what we're trying to do is help them find solutions and pathways forward. And, obviously, there are lots of competing priorities and needs and interests, and we just represent the science. So we can't answer the questions for people. We can just provide them the information to make a decision. But really what we're trying to do is help them find a solution. And like you said, that can be really positive and inspiring and hopeful, and help people find joy in something that can be pretty heavy and seem like you mentioned, existential.
Yeah, and that is it, folks. Because if we don't want to just be existing, we want to be living, basically. And that's exactly the part. I love it. What you just said, it's just perfect there. So we've got one of a question we've got for Jog Q over Brew is alludes to all of what you just said. So I'm going to put a pin in that and come back to that a bit later, because I want to. So as we've got all of our massive to-do list and all these stakeholders to engage with and all these, and you've got your drink with you. What is that drink that you've got with you? See what I did there? I'm practicing my segues.
Yeah. Thanks for that great question, Kit Marie. So typically, I'm a tea drinker, and I would drink a really strong black tea. I think you would call it a builder's tea. But today I wanted to bring something a little special. So I brought what is called Kashmiri Kava. It's a green tea, and my family is originally from India, from this region of India called Kashmir. It's along the India-Pakistan border. And so this is a tea that is from where I'm from, and I wanted to bring it to the show and drink it while I was talking to you. So that is my tea that I'm drinking today.
Oh, that's lovely, and this is not the first time, folks, that we've had a guest on the podcast who's like brought in the tea from their heritage. So I had no idea how I managed this, Aparna, but it was I managed to get the actor Adil Hussain on the podcast in my very first season, who has been in Life of Pi and other things like that, and he is he's an Assam drinker because he's from the Golpara region. and then I never drunk Assam before that, and then I started having it copiously, and it was like, and there was this one precious moment when, as he was talking to me, his wife kind of comes in with this whole pot of tea, and it was just looked gorgeous, and he went through this whole ceremony as we were talking, and I'm just like, I love that just happening there. And so you talking about, this is something from my family heritage. So let's move on with that then. So let's see. So you are at the moment you said you're in North Carolina at the moment, but you've been how long did you live in Colorado for before went over to North Carolina?
Yeah, about 4.5 years. I think, like a lot of people who end up in science, I have moved around a fair bit wherever school or work was able to take me. And so I lived in Colorado, I've lived in Oklahoma, I lived in California.
Oh, wow.
I lived in Virginia. So moved around a fair bit. And I think, something that it taught me, which is a very strong concept in geography, is that for something like climate adaptation, place really matters, that local context. The communities are very strongly driven by that geographic sense of place. But at the same time, people are people, and there are lots of things that connect us across those places. And so thinking about how we scale solutions from one community to the next, how we move across large landscapes, I think, it has really taught me that we have differences, but we also have a lot that brings us together.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for folks who are not familiar with kind of the geography of the United States, so Raleigh, North Carolina is there on the east there, but when Aparna was talking about Oklahoma and Colorado, and United States is a big country. It is the same. I can't remember. I should know this as an ex-geography teacher, whether it's just the lower 48 or whether it's the whole plus Alaska, but it's about the same size as China, which is also a very big country. So these are not small places, folks. And when my partner and I did a road trip across the states, visiting friends and family along the way in 2010, it took us 2 weeks to get across, that bit. But of course, stopping along the way, obviously. But that's how long it could take you. So yes, North Carolina's over there. You can see California there. Colorado is here, and Oklahoma's here. That kind of really weird shaped bit because Texas is jutting up. And so yeah, it's the question I like to ask people, as you probably heard me talk to other people up on it. So, what is it about your geographical identity? So, have you you obviously you've got the screenshot behind you of the flat islands from Colorado. So obviously that's something that's dear to your heart, that kind of landscape. You've mentioned the tea, being from India and the Kashmir area of India. So in terms of your identity, how has geography informed your identity to the person you are today?
That's a great question. I think, as I mentioned, geography has really taught me to think carefully about place and space and scale, how that local is connected to the national or global, and how we can bring people together. The other thing I think I have learned through my life is to try to meet people where they're at. And so this can mean geographically where they're at, but it can also mean the job they're in, where they're in, and they're thinking about climate change.
Mm.
So, we work with resource managers who are everything from, hey, I heard climate change is important, but I don't really know what to do about it. Can you explain some very basic concepts to me? To people who are thinking in a very nuanced way about, these species on my landscape, here is how they're interacting. I think climate change is going to make this difference. How do I incorporate that into a certain planning process that I'm already doing, and meeting people where they're at in those conversations, using the language they're comfortable with, showing up in the places where they're having the conversation. So if I want to meet with resource managers, I'm not going to go to a traditional scientific conference. I'm going to go to the meetings where they are meeting each other and having these discussions. So that's another thing that I think comes along with being a geographer, is really trying to get your brain to switch between these different modes of thinking, these different perspectives, and really trying to bring it all together and being that connective tissue between various people.
Yeah, you know what? That's really interesting. I've had quite a lot of discussions with people of different intersecting heritages, and it's so interesting. They talk about like code switching and stuff like that, but geographical code switching, that's interesting. And now I can see it most definitely. Yeah. So as a geographer, I'm wondering whether as geographers we have this kind of ability to kind of almost code switch in that respect, if it comes to intersectional issues with involving the human and the physical geography and things like that. And I suppose with me, I'm traditionally, I trained as a physical geographer, so mostly meteorology, climatology and things like that, and atmospheric physics and things. But when I was teaching geography, at high school, I really enjoyed the human side of it more, but also how the physical and human interacted. And I was able to kind of switch, like from being very physical, very physics-based, very mathematics, to more nuance, more storytelling, more. Yeah, you got me thinking now. I really like that.
Yeah, and for my PhD, my research was very much in that human geography side of things. So I did interviews and surveys and really thought about the interactions between managers and scientists when doing research together. But prior to that, I tried doing a PhD and decided it wasn't for me. When I did that, it was in a Department of Earth and Planetary Sciences, very much on that physical science side of things. And I realized,
Hmm.
hey, that's not the way I like to think about climate impacts and climate science. That was not the right match for my interests and expertise. But I still remember what I learned in those courses. And in my job right now, I talk to ecologists or wildlife biologists or fish biologists. And so I'm working with people who are planners, people who are scientists on the biological side, people who are climate scientists more on that physical climate side. And like I said, I think geography really gives you the skills to have those different parts of your brain firing and to try to bring them together and be that bridge between all of these different pieces. And when you're talking about something that is so complex as climate change and species movement or something like that, they don't care about political boundaries. It is
No.
really about pulling together all of these different bits of science to try to address the problem.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, that's a good point. And I've got this quote here, so I'm gonna put on the screen, folks, people who can't, of people who are listening, this fantastic interview that the USGS did with you, and they gamified it because of we might get to talk about it later about this kind of open world gaming that you enjoy, but where it says here that you said I overcorrected, I swung too far along the science scale and lost the application of science to people. And so was that when you started your PhD, or was that during your PhD? Because and then
Yeah,
as you
that
read,
was
and then when did that transition happen? When you were like, you had that epiphany, if you like.
yeah. So that was during that 3 years. Like I said, I did the coursework towards this PhD more on the physical climate side of things. I had entered that thinking that I was going to be a climate modeler, and during that period of time, I realized that the thing that really interested me about climate change was not necessarily the interactions in the physical climate system and trying to understand that. It was trying to understand what people can do about climate change.
Mm.
And that's where I left that PhD program. I had to do some self-assessing to figure out, how do I make a job out of this? And then I had that opportunity to start working in a position at the University of Oklahoma. And while I was there, I started doing my PhD on the side, and eventually I finished my PhD, really taking what I was passionate about and crafting my dissertation around that.
Engaging with stakeholders to produce actionable science, moving from theory to practice. And you won the University of Oklahoma's 2022 Provost PhD Dissertation Awards. Congratulations.
Thank you. I think, for my PhD, we talk about in our world what's called actionable science. And so this is science that's not just inspired by use or decision making, but it's really tailored to be actionable. So it's that people can take action using it. And it means often that you have the partner that you're working with involved in the research project. So from the beginning, they help you determine your research questions, how you're going to tackle that project, what methods you're going to use, what data you might collect. If you're designing a tool or a product at the end of it, you might do some user design to have them tell you, well, these are the buttons we want, or this is what the data should look like. We want the maps to look like this, or here's the time period we really care about. And I really wanted to study the process by which that engagement happens. What does the partnership look like? How do those partners like to be brought in? Is there a threshold? Sometimes we talk about what's known as stakeholder fatigue. You might be asking people too much for their time that they're volunteering to participate in your study. And so how do we navigate those decisions as scientists? And so I was able to craft a dissertation that was based on my job. And really, I tried to take those results back and then improve how we run things in my job. And that's the way that I've been able to continue to do a little bit of research on the side. I continue to be involved in projects that are really introspective. How do we improve our operations? Where do we possibly have deficits that we can address? And so that's been one way that I've tried to still be a scientist, even though that's not the core part of my job.
That's fantastic. You know what? That really, really has helped me center and appreciate kind of like what my approach is, because a lot of people who know me personally and my work colleagues affectionately think of me as someone who's a bit of a loose cannon and a bit of a scattergun, who has, especially with my neurodivergency, where I kind of like, I have these fireworks of ideas, and which I can see the science, I understand the science of climate vulnerability and stuff like that, and the physical basis behind all of that. And then I have all of regurgitate all this, this can be this could, and so I think the way that you articulated that by demonstrating for what you've been doing, I think has really kind of helped me appreciate that. Actually, I kind of folks like myself, your colleagues, and you, I've got this kind of ability to kind of, I don't know, it's a cliche to saying now, but seeing the wood for the trees. Why are we doing this science? What does it actually mean? What messages is it saying? What story is it telling? Why does it matter? And how is it going to be received? How should it be received? And so so thank you for kind of like really articulating that exceptionally well, because that's really helped me appreciate it, kind of what's going through my brain, even though I can't articulate it myself.
Well, and as someone who is also neurodivergent and maybe picking up on that superhero theme right there, I do think of that as one of my superpowers. I really see the world as a puzzle, or a problem as a puzzle. And I like to learn about every piece and how it all fits together. And again, I think that's why I really fell in love with geography when I learned more about it. Here in the US, we don't have geography as a core subject that we learn earlier in life. And so it took me a little while to find geography. And when I did, I was like, oh, this is about how the world all fits together and how we make sense of that. And it really kind of aligned with how I perceive the world.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Why do I feel so comfortable identifying as a geographer with the way that my brain works? And that makes total sense. Yeah, it's almost the world of geography is actually a neurodiverse or a neurospicy person's dream, really, isn't it? It's our playground, it's our sandbox, because there's so many different directions we can go in, which is exactly the way our brain works. So yeah, I love it. Oh, good. Oh, I love these. I don't know. I always discover a little bit more about myself, or I understand myself the more I talk to folks, which is why I love doing this thing. So I just want to show you something, Aparna, which is if I let me just switch to this tab here, folks. Hopefully it will come up. Yeah, there we go. So what I'm showing on the screen, folks, let me just describe it to you if you've not watching this on YouTube. So this is what I'm using for the basis of my research, and this is climate vulnerability, social, economic, and an index of multiple deprivation measured vulnerabilities to flood risk in the United Kingdom. So what you can see, folks, what me and Aparna can see is around, not surprising, around the edge of the coastline, you can see different shades of red. You can also see that where there's like higher dense urban areas. And basically what this map is showing is that if you're red, you're at heightened vulnerability for when a flood happens or if there's a high risk of flooding. And the bluer areas, you're least vulnerable. Doesn't mean you're not, just means you're least than the national average. So the reason why I show this to you, Aparna, is because this is exactly the kind of what you're describing. So this is a fantastic piece of research done by, in this case, Paul Sayers and his team. And I'll put the link in the description, folks, so you can see it. But the question is, what does it mean? And how exactly is it useful? So one of the things that I've done, so here so I'm based over here in the east of England. I don't know if my mouse is coming up. So you see that kind of ear-shaped bit that sticks out to the east. So that's where I'm based, East Anglia. And you see you've got some rivers just there, like in the kind of like the top towards the northeast corner. That's the Norfolk Broads there. And right there is one of the most vulnerable parts of the country in terms of deprivation, areas like Great Yarmouth, Lowestoft. And so what do? Instead of just saying, oh, here's the data, schools, deal with it, my colleagues and I have been running workshops and support sessions for the schools in that area about adapting to climate change, heat and flood risk, and helping them to access the level of government support and community support that's out there. So that is exactly that's another demonstration of what Aparna is saying. So whereas she does the things from that kind of USGS kind of point of view and the CASC point of view, this is yet another, almost the very same methodology through, so this is why you're speaking my language anyway. So, which is absolutely fantastic. And also, I mean, it's again, it's a depressing map, folks, because it's existential kind of stuff. But as a geographer, it's beautiful as well. We can't deny that. It's a thing of beauty.
Oh, yes. And this is, yeah, you are speaking exactly the language of the kinds of topics and tools that we're thinking about. The difference being like what you're talking about is working individually with communities and students. And like I said, we work through that lens of natural resources or public lands. So a lot of the time we're working with federal or state or tribal resource management agencies or resource managers. And, you know, I think the important thing for people to keep in mind is that by not thinking about climate change, you're making a decision because you're going to be managing those species or landscapes anyway. So you are making a decision to act based on whatever the past is. And I know that climate change can often be overwhelming. It's really
Yeah.
it's not something that a lot of people learned about in school if they're of a certain age. And so for them, it's hard to know where to start. There's a lot of information out there. There are a lot of tools out there. And often what we do is we go in, we ask them, what are the priority resources that you're managing in this landscape? How do you think they're vulnerable to weather or changes in climate. Is it precipitation? Is it maximum temperature? Is it changes in the last or first frost date? And so based on those, then we can create some data or information summaries, work with them to kind of step them through the thinking about how do I take the science that's available and apply it. And then again, like I said, there are often trade-offs that managers are making. They might have a certain amount of money that they can spend on building structures or treating for invasive species or doing whatever it is. And if you put $1 here, you're not putting $1 there. And so what are the decisions you're making, and what are the various outcomes that you're maybe going to have to trade off in?
Which is the fact that you said that is perfect for Gemma's question here. So Gemma, one of our listeners, Gemma Archer, said on LinkedIn, how do you balance this scientific evidence with the needs and priority of communities? So can you give us so to carry on from your point there, how have you tried to do that? How in your and CASC have tried to meet this really difficult balance? Because for me, I've one thing that I've come to terms with and I appreciate now is that, the way that science is done traditionally in terms of quote unquote Western science is a very colonial process, not just in terms of, usurping indigenous knowledge and traditional knowledge, but also the fact that it's been seen as it's this way or the highway, basically, and other things don't matter. But you obviously know, you clearly, the way you talk and the way that your agency work, that's not the case at all. So with all this in mind and all these things we've got to balance, how do you do that? I mean, what a tricky job.
It can be very challenging. I think, we work, for example, with the US National Park Service, and they have park units out on the landscape. And for an individual park unit, there may be what's called establishing legislation. So there might have been an act that was written by Congress that says, we're designating this unit for these purposes. And sometimes it's a designated wilderness, which means that they're trying to preserve certain properties of that ecosystem. Or it could be that it's designated for grazing. And so then they have permittees who bring livestock onto the land for grazing. So for a certain, maybe as a starting point, we say, hey, what is the purpose of your unit? Where do you get your priorities from? Is it because they're codified in law? Is there some other process you've gone through? And then, of course, as you said, there are the communities that live near these places. And so for park units, we call them gateway communities. Often at the entrance or exit of a park, there's a town that supports their livelihoods are supported by the existence of that park. And so we might work with them to say, what are your priorities? What do you care about? And then there are visitors, and some of whom may come from another country, or some who come from within the country from another state, and they have their purpose for being there. And so trying to rank all of these and often understanding that you may not be able to meet every single user's priority, but being transparent about the fact that you heard their priority and you did your best to incorporate it is really an important part of the process. Just acknowledging that that priority exists, but knowing that you don't have enough money or people or time to be able to meet every single user's priority. That's one way we tackle it.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I've heard a lot of criticisms with, some people, especially in the decolonial spaces, about just even the term stakeholder engagement, or even the term stakeholder can be problematic in a way, because it's like everybody, it assumes that everybody should have equal domain on something, when actually there needs to be a weighting to, the landowners, the traditional keepers of the land and things like that. And just, as you just alluded to, kind of like, what is it actually we're doing this work for? Who are we doing this work for? So I mean, I was just thinking out loud there about when I've heard that word of kind of I've heard about the criticisms of that. Sorry, continue.
Oh, no, I was just going to give an example of a project we worked on where there were some cultural artifacts that would potentially be threatened by flooding from, raised levels of a river due to some further upstream changes. And one of the conversations that the management unit had to have was with a tribal partner to say, we know that your preference is to preserve these cultural artifacts in situ, but if we look at the projections, here's the risk to the artifacts. They might be damaged due to flooding in the future. What are your preferences? Do you want us to continue to preserve in situ and build out some infrastructure to try to buffer from flooding? Do you want us to remove them and do archival preservation techniques? So if it's a visitor center or a cultural center, and keep them off site. And that's a very difficult conversation to have, but
Yeah.
by having it ahead of time, then the tribe was able to go back, do their own community engagement with their tribal members, and then come back to the management partner and say, well, we've discussed it, and really what we want is for those artifacts to be removed and preserved off-site, because we think it's more important to have them preserved rather than to keep them in situ. And so those are the kinds of conversations that can happen when you have that scientific evidence. And then you can say, okay, you have multiple priorities. They can't all be met. And it can be
Yeah.
challenging to navigate that, but it does then give people the tools to have challenging conversations.
And I think that's the really important thing, isn't it? Is that, again, that is a perfect illustration of bringing the science and enabling people to access it and then make informed decisions based on it at a time that suits them, rather than rushing into a decision, or all of a sudden it's now everything's been ignored, they haven't been consulted, and then the flood happens and it's too late. So so it's these 1 in 50 year, 1 in 100 year storms or floods are happening more frequently, and they're more likely to be just around the corner than they are to be in the future, aren't they? In the far future. So that is really, really fascinating. It's fantastic, and therefore they're taking ownership of what's happening, which is absolutely right and proper that they should, because it's their land, their artifact. They should get to decide, but that must build trust as well. It's like, thank you for this, for providing this information, but allowing us to come to the decision rather than the science going in and telling, this is what you should do. You should do this,
Yeah, and again, like that's the role that we see for ourselves. We gave that information to the park for them to have that conversation with their partners, and again, they're balancing many different priorities. The tribe is one partner. They have other partners. They have
yeah.
again, like I said, resource constraints, maybe only so much money. And maybe then the next conversation is, we can't preserve every single artifact. How do we start making priority decisions about
Yeah.
which ones to address first? So again, that's science that starts the conversation and provides sort of the foundation for it. But it's up to the partners and the decision makers to then take it and make the next step towards action and implementation.
Thank you very, very much, Gemma, for that question. That was absolutely fantastic, and thank you, Aparna, for that insight, which is absolutely fantastic. And yeah, it's just I love that model, because it's exactly the way I think things should work. You've got people with expertise, people with the science background, people with the rights or the experience and stuff like that, and that's exactly how it should work, because we're a human being. We're all one. We're all one community in the end of the day, and the community is all about everybody having their expertise and mashing it together, which is absolutely fantastic.
And we want to make sure that people in those management positions and policymaking positions, they have the best science available to them, so that they can make those informed decisions. So again, like in order to be able to do that, we want to make sure that the science is answering the right questions that they have in the format that they need it. They know how to access and use it. And so that's really the space that we're trying to fill, is how can we make sure that they know that the science exists and they know how to get to it.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. Right, we're going to move on to spilling the beans now. So I should have had my little sound bite going on straight away, folks, but I wasn't ready for it. So let's try that again. Spilling the beans. There we go. So I'm going to put this on the screen because you provided me with some lovely visuals. So here's a few. I could pick so many things from this. So what should we spill the beans on? You've got human geographer, your skill server, process thinker. My favorite things. My doggo is my BFF. What's your doggo's name?
My dog's name is Chip, and he's a miniature
Chip.
dachshund, or as he's called in the UK, a sausage dog. And I like to tell people that my dog is my best friend, but my dog's best friend is my husband. So I know where in the hierarchy I fall.
Oh yeah, we've my next door neighbor actually has got a sausage dog called Oscar. He's got one of his legs has got a gammy leg, bless him, but he's so sweet. And every time he sees me come home from work, he kind of bounces up to the front gate of the house and he's like, pet me, Kit, pet me. So and
they
quite
are big
often he manages to
personalities
escape.
in little bodies.
Oh my goodness, they certainly are. And sometimes a couple of days ago, I saw him roaming around our garden. I was like, Oscar, what are you doing? He like looks at me, he's like, you're gonna tell me. And he's so good because I don't have to chase him or pick him up. I'm just like, Oscar, come on. And he follows me, and I open the gate, and he's back in. And he's got that look. It's like, sorry, Kit, but I will get out again. Don't you? You'll see. Bless him. So that's really sweet. Yeah, they're such little cute dogs. And things you love to do: reading, gaming, and your job. We've talked a lot about your job, so let's focus on the gaming bit, because the reason why the USGS did that interview and they did that gaming graphics is because you call yourself an open world gamer, which is really cool. So how would you describe yourself? So what do we mean by open world gaming? I mean, is it things like Minecraft? My kids, I must admit, me too, like love Minecraft. Is that what we mean by open world gaming?
No, so I'm gonna age myself a little bit, but when I was young, I used to play the Sierra Adventures games, so Heroes Quest, King's Quest.
Oh yes.
And yeah, they were really beautiful story-driven games, and that's really the kind of game that I like to play now. My husband and I often play the Assassin's Creed games, which are very beautiful story-driven games. I mentioned prior to us starting recording to Kit Marie that right now I'm playing Skyrim, which is a game that is 10 years old, but still very fun to play through and very simple gameplay in comparison to some of the modern games. So I'm finding right now after a day of work that my brain wants something very simple and clear to play through. And the other game that I'm playing right now, which is not an open world game, is Disney Dreamlight Valley. I'm a little embarrassed to say that out loud on the podcast, but it's a game where you go around and you help Disney characters with their very basic problems. Mostly it's like, I did something awkward, help me clear it up with this friend of mine. And again, it's very, very simple. And you get a little bit of joy out of helping people.
Yeah, wow. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Oh, so just trying to think of loads of those kind of games I used to play as well. I mean, I'll tell you what I've started collecting again nowadays, because I'm a big Trekkie, is the old Star Trek customizable card game, where it's almost limitless because you collect all these different cards, everything from the key characters to key ships, the Enterprise, Captain Picard, stuff like that, all the planets, but all these minor characters as well, and all of these different pieces of equipment, and it's so open world, it could just go on forever, so that kind of card game as well. But yeah, I'm just looking at the pictures of Hero Quest, so like, crikey, I remember the board game on that. Absolutely. Wow, that brings back memories too.
Yeah, or the old
So,
Monkey Island games. Um,
oh, I love
games with,
Monkey Island.
yeah, the fun story, a little bit of humor, and yeah, all the side characters are just really interesting and have you want to
Yeah,
know their whole backstory too, kind of
yeah.
like the
Murray the
Star Trek game.
Skull, Elaine Marley, and who was it else? Otis. I can't believe it's all coming out now. Carla the Swordmaster, Stan the boat salesman.
So fun, and
Yeah.
even now replayable.
Yes. Yes, I was actually about a year or so ago. I remember showing my kids like the old Monkey Island game. I was like, saying, "Look at these graphics, kids. This is what we were growing up with." And they were like, "What?" But they're intrigued, you know.
Yeah, I
Folks,
mean, I
look
think it
that up. You
shows you
can
don't.
play those old games for free, can't you? Online now, really. There's a lot of games like that online for free now.
And you don't necessarily need the fanciest, most cutting edge graphics to really like if it's got a good story and good characters, that game is timeless.
Oh, timeless is exactly the right word. And the music, I can still remember the music now. So oh my goodness, you're taking me back now. So yeah, I know you said your age and yourself, but me too, folks. So, but seriously, I need to share this because I need, especially you quote unquote younger listeners out there. Here we go. Here's a screenshot for you. So it's very. So I think when did it came out? 1990, I think it did. So yeah, here's a shot of the gameplay. Look at that. Oh, and that was the revamped version as well, because the original one
Yeah,
wasn't that fancy, because it was all just words. You've got icons there for your coins, your maps, the mints. Oh, the breath mints.
but yeah, that is
Oh,
I think the remastered version.
that's the remaster. Yeah, and look, yeah, folks, I know what you're saying. That's the remastered. It's still looking very pixelated. No, that really is. But yeah, look at all that. Yeah, no, that's it. I can go down a rabbit hole now, or should I say the giant monkey head? Oh, what a thing to bond over. Fantastic. Yeah. So, it's a shame we've got to bring this discussion to an end now, Aparna, because I've really, really enjoyed this. Everything from geeking out about games, but also the shared experiences with our work and the parallels of our work, but the kind of the listening to what you do and how you do it. It's been absolutely fantastic. So we're going to finish off with the last little thing then, and that is we are all geographers. So we are all geographers is where we link together our guests using a single word chain, and so it's like a passing it forward kind of game. So last episode, I have the wonderful Pluto Liao on, and they did a fantastic job with the word, but they wanted to come up with a word. They were very, very stuck about what words to come up with. In the end of the day, they came up with whale. The word whale, so as in sperm whale, blue whale, whale in the ocean, or in my case, the whales from Star Trek 4, the Journey Home. So I'm just geeking out completely now. So yeah, so whenever you're ready, Aparna, it's just 30 seconds on the word whale. However you so wish. It could even be that you find them in the rocks with their fossils and their bones in limestone. No, I'm not even going to give you any ideas. You know what you're doing.
Okay, well, I will get started, and I will say that the region that I work in has no coastline, so whales are not something I have a whole lot of experience with. I'm going to treat whale as a concept, and to me, the whale in the room is climate change. I think
Oh,
it's, like I said, overwhelming. Not a lot of people know how to tackle it. But you just take a little bit of a bite-sized piece, you take a step forward, you reach out for help. Someone can tell you the shape of the whale, whether you want to start at the tail or the blowhole, and you can tackle it. It's not too big.
yeah. Yeah, brilliant. I'm going to use that from now on. Not the elephant in the room, the whale in the tank or something. My granddad used to say that when I was a kid. He used to go, "Hey kid, you know what? I used to own a whale in a tank once." And like at the moment, like when we were very, very little, we were like, "Oh wow, wow." And then as we got older, we got wise to it. He started to say things like, "I used to be Superman once." Or here's a UK TV classic. I used to fly a Thunderbird machine once. I'm like, okay, granddad, all right. So,
He sounds
but
like a
yeah.
trip. Well, hopefully I did
Oh, he
okay
most
because
certainly was.
that was a hard word for me.
Oh no, you did great. Yeah, I mean, someone who's like, landlocked mountains, and now we're talking about something in the ocean. But you get to have your turn now with the person I talk to next. So it could be anything
So
you like, something we've discussed or something random, whatever you like.
I came in thinking that I had a word picked out already for this, and you actually changed my mind as we were talking. So originally I came in, I thought the word I was going to pick was transformation, but instead
Ooh.
I'm gonna toss that out. I'm gonna transform, and the word I'm gonna pick is joy, because at the very
Oh,
beginning you said something about finding the joy in the work we do, and finding joy in finding solutions to climate impacts and adaptation. And so that's what I'm going to pick, joy.
oh, oh! What a lovely, lovely word to sum up our discussion as well. I think is the word joy, because this really, really has been quite joyful. So, and I want other people to discover this. So, where can people find you on social media?
Because I'm a government employee, open and available to the public in the event that they would like to reach out if they have questions or would like more information about the work we do. So on the USGS website, usgs.gov, you can search for me. I have a staff profile. It's got some information about me and my email address. And so people, if you would like more information about the work we do, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah. Yeah, please do. And that's one of the things which was absolutely fantastic when I had a little my like voluntary internship with NOAA was that approachability and that openness. And one of my best experiences that one of my best friends was the education lead for Ezreal. And I used to work with her quite a lot. And then we always used to have people coming in, doing guided tours, doing talks. Some of the scientists would come out and speak to them and stuff like that. And it was just such a joy. So, and it's lovely that we have, at least, traditionally we've had NOAA and USGS and the Forest Service, and all those kind of public facing bodies who that's what they do. They're there for the public. They serve the public, and they want to talk to the public and engage with the public. So, folks, please do take Aparna up on that offer, because my experience with people who've worked in the public domain in the United States has been incredible, and some of the best memories of working with people like with NOAA and USGS and people like that. So, yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad you had a good experience. And thank you for inviting me to be on the podcast. This was just really fun and a true joy to talk to you.
Oh, it was certainly a joy. Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Coffee and Geography. If you're enjoying the show, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app and leave us a rating or review. It really helps. Some episodes are also available with video, so don't forget to check out the Geogrambling's YouTube channel for more. Stay in the loop by following us and using hashtag CoffeeJogPod on Blue Sky and LinkedIn. That's hashtag CoffeeJogPod, where we share updates on new episodes and upcoming guests. Got a question for a guest? Post it on LinkedIn or Blue Sky using hashtag JogQ Yes, hashtag JogQ and we might just feature it on the show. Keep exploring, keep connecting, and as always, keep geogging.